The office looked exactly the same. The glass walls reflected the morning sunlight. Computer screens slowly came to life. Coffee machines hummed in the corner, while employees exchanged the same familiar greetings they had repeated every weekday for years. Nothing felt unusual until the email arrived. We are pleased to announce our new operations manager. Within seconds, keyboards stopped clicking. People reached for their phones. Conversations began spreading across the open office like ripples through still water. Some smiled, some whispered, some immediately opened the company's internal directory to confirm the news. One name appeared at the top, his coworker, the man sitting only 3 desks away. For 6 years, they had walked almost identical paths. They joined the company in the same month, attended the same onboarding sessions, worked on many of the same projects, stayed late together before important deadlines, shared coffee during difficult weeks, complained about impossible clients, celebrated completed projects. If someone had asked which of them would be promoted first, most people would have struggled to answer. They were that similar. The office erupted into applause. Managers gathered around the newly promoted employee. Hands were shaken. Congratulations echoed to the department. Someone ordered pastries. Another suggested a team lunch. The atmosphere became unexpectedly festive. He stood, walked across the room, smiled sincerely, extended his hand. Congratulations. His coworker smiled back. Thank you. I honestly couldn't have done it without the team. He meant every word, or at least, he wanted to believe he did. Returning to his desk took only a few seconds. Yet, somehow, everything looked different. The monitor, the keyboard, the unfinished reports. Even the chair where he had worked for years suddenly felt unfamiliar. He opened the project he had been working on before the announcement. The same numbers remained on the screen. The same deadline still existed. Nothing about his job had changed, yet something inside him had. A quiet question appeared without invitation. Why him? He immediately pushed it away. He was happy for his colleague. He respected him. He deserved the promotion. So why did it hurt? The rest of the day passed strangely. Every congratulation spoken across the office seemed louder than usual. Every handshake felt like a reminder. Every smile directed toward his coworker somehow reached him as well, not because anyone intended it to, because comparison had quietly entered the room. That evening, the office gradually emptied. Lights switched off one department at a time. Employees wished one another good night and disappeared into the city. He stayed, not because he had more work, because he wasn't ready to go home carrying a feeling he couldn't explain. He stood beside the large windows overlooking the city. Rain had begun falling. Cars moved slowly through streets illuminated by red brake lights and glowing office towers. The promotion wasn't what troubled him. At least, that wasn't the whole truth. What troubled him was what it seemed to say, that someone else had moved forward, while he remained exactly where he was. The following morning, everything became worse. His phone filled with notifications, LinkedIn posts, photos from the promotion celebration, comments praising his co-workers' leadership, messages from former colleagues saying, well deserved, amazing achievement, congratulations. He stared at the screen longer than he intended. Then he closed the application, only to open it again a few minutes later. Without realizing it, he began measuring himself against someone else's success. By lunchtime, his concentration had disappeared. Simple tasks took twice as long. Every achievement from the past 6 years suddenly felt smaller. Every mistake felt larger. Nothing outside had changed, only the way he looked at himself. Late that evening, long after most employees had gone home, he walked toward the office kitchen. The coffee machine was still humming softly. Someone stood beside it, an older man wearing a dark coat. Calm, unhurried, he didn't seem to belong to any department. He quietly poured a cup of coffee and looked out to the rain-covered windows. The young employee hesitated. I don't think we've met. The older man smiled. Probably not. You work here, in a way. The answer was strange enough to make him pause. For several moments, neither man spoke. The rain tapped gently against the glass. The office around them remained almost completely silent. Finally, The older man looked toward him. You've been suffering since yesterday. The young employee forced a polite smile. It's nothing. The man shook his head gently. No, it rarely is. The employee looked surprised. I wasn't overlooked. My coworker deserved a promotion. I know that. The older man nodded. I believe you. Then why does it still hurt? The question lingered between them. The young employee searched for an answer. None came. The older man lifted his coffee, then quietly asked, Tell me, did you lose your future yesterday? He paused just long enough for the silence to become uncomfortable. Or only someone else's? The young employee froze. For the first time since the promotion announcement, he realized he had never actually asked himself that question. The older man extended his hand. My name, he said calmly, is Friedrich Nietzsche. Outside, the rain continued falling. Inside, a different kind of storm had only just begun. The office returned to its normal rhythm. Monday became Tuesday. Meetings filled the calendar. Emails accumulated. Deadlines continued arriving with perfect indifference. Nothing about the company had changed. The promotion had already become yesterday's news. Everyone else had moved on. Everyone except him. Because while the office had returned to work, his mind had not. The question Nietzsche had asked lingered in every quiet moment. Did you lose your future yesterday or only someone else's? He tried to ignore it. Instead, he buried himself in work. But concentration no longer came naturally. Each time he opened his laptop, another window quietly demanded his attention. LinkedIn. He told himself he was only checking messages. Instead, he found himself scrolling. Former classmates announcing promotions. Old coworkers celebrating new jobs. Someone buying a new house. Another posting pictures from an international conference. Every success felt strangely personal. Not because he disliked those people, because each achievement silently asked him the same question. What about you? He closed the application. 5 minutes later, he opened it again, not out of curiosity, out of habit, or perhaps something deeper. Comparison had become a reflex. That evening, as most employees prepared to leave, he noticed Nietzsche sitting alone in the office lounge, calmly reading a book beside the window. Outside, the city lights shimmered through the rain. The young employee walked over. I think you were right. Nietzsche closed the book. About what? I'm not upset because he was promoted. He hesitated. I'm upset because I suddenly feel behind. Nietzsche nodded, as expected. The young employee frowned. I don't understand. The philosopher gestured toward the office around them. Yesterday morning, you came here thinking about your own work. You had goals. You had plans. You had progress. The employee nodded. Then one announcement arrived. And suddenly, Nietzsche leaned forward slightly. You abandoned your own path. To begin measuring someone else's, the words landed with uncomfortable precision. Because they were true, nothing about his abilities had changed overnight. Nothing about his experience had disappeared. Nothing about his future had been taken away. Only his attention. Nietzsche continued. Comparison is not painful because someone else succeeds. It becomes painful because you stop seeing yourself. Silence settled over the lounge. The employees stared out through the rain-covered glass. Cars moved slowly through the evening traffic, each one heading somewhere different. No two drivers followed exactly the same road. Yet he had spent the last 2 days believing everyone's journey should look identical. The next morning, another meeting was held. The newly promoted manager presented plans for the department. Everyone listened carefully. The young employee noticed something surprising. His co-worker looked nervous, uncertain, even overwhelmed. The promotion had not removed his fears. It had simply given him different ones. For the first time, he realized he had been comparing his own daily struggles to someone else's public achievement. After the meeting, Nietzsche met him again near the elevator. You saw it. The employee nodded slowly. I thought promotion meant certainty. It doesn't. I thought success meant confidence. It doesn't. Nietzsche smiled faintly. Every mountain reveals another one. They walked together toward the office cafeteria. Neither seemed in a hurry. Finally, Nietzsche stopped beside a large window overlooking the city. He pointed toward a young tree growing alone in the courtyard below. Do you see that tree? Yes. Is it failing because it is shorter than the building beside it? The employee almost laughed. Of course not. It is growing exactly as it should. Nietzsche looked at him. And yet, you judge yourself by a standard you would never use for nature. The words remained suspended between them because they exposed something painfully simple. He had been expecting his life to unfold according to someone else's timeline, someone else's opportunities, someone else's story. Nietzsche spoke one final time before turning away. When was the last time you measured yourself against the person you were yesterday instead of the person sitting 3 desks away? The employee searched for an answer. He couldn't remember. Not yesterday. Not last month. Perhaps not for years. And in that realization, he understood that comparison had never stolen his promotion. It had stolen something far more valuable: his ability to see his own progress. Monday arrived once again. The office looked exactly as it always had. Employees greeted one another with familiar smiles. Coffee machines hummed quietly in the corner. Computer screens flickered to life one by one. Outside, the city rushed toward another busy morning. Nothing had changed, and yet everything had, because something inside the young employee had become quieter. The promotion was still real. His coworker was still the new manager. The office hierarchy remained exactly the same. But for the first time since that announcement, he wasn't looking toward someone else's desk. He was looking at his own. He opened a notebook that had remained untouched for weeks. Inside were goals he had written nearly a year earlier, skills he wanted to learn, projects he wanted to complete, ideas he had postponed while waiting for the right time. He stared at the pages for several moments. Then something struck him. Almost none of them had anything to do with becoming better than someone else. They were promises he had made to himself. Somewhere along the way, he had stopped listening to them. Later that afternoon, the newly promoted manager walked over. "I've been meaning to ask," he said. "Would you help me lead the new project?" The young employee looked surprised. "Me?" His coworker smiled. "You're one of the reasons I was ready for this role. You've always been someone I could rely on." For a brief moment, he felt the old temptation, the desire to compare, to wonder why the other man had received the title. Then he noticed something different. That question no longer mattered, because another question had quietly taken its place. Who am I becoming? That evening, long after most employees had left, he stepped outside the office building. The rain had stopped. The streets reflected the warm glow of the city lights. The air felt lighter. Across the plaza, sitting on a bench beneath a small tree, was Friedrich Nietzsche. The philosopher looked up as he approached. "You seem different." The young employee smiled. "I think I finally understand." Nietzsche closed the book resting in his hands. "What do you understand?" The young employee looked back at the office tower behind them. "For days, I thought someone else's success had taken something from me." He shook his head gently. "It hadn't. I was the one giving my attention away." Nietzsche nodded. "And attention is the most valuable thing you own." Silence settled between them. People walked past without noticing either man. The city continued chasing promotion, salaries, titles, and recognition, just as it always would. The philosopher stood. He adjusted his coat and looked toward the evening sky. "Success is not dangerous," he said calmly. "Comparison is." The young employee listened carefully. Nietzsche continued. "The moment you begin living someone else's timeline, you stop living your own." The words lingered in the quiet air. For the first time in weeks, he felt no urgency to check LinkedIn, no desire to compare salaries, no need to measure himself against the people around him. Tomorrow, he would return to the same desk, work with the same colleagues, walk through the same office. But he would no longer be chasing another person's story. He would be building his own. Nietzsche began walking away. Just before disappearing into the evening crowd, he stopped one final time. Without turning around, he spoke. "Do not ask whether you are ahead of someone else. Ask whether you are farther than the person you were yesterday. Then he disappeared among the city lights. The young employee remained standing outside the office. The building behind him was unchanged. The promotion announcement still existed. The world had not become fairer overnight. But something far more important had happened. He had stopped competing with everyone around him, and quietly, without applause, without recognition, without anyone noticing, he had taken the first real step toward becoming himself.